Also at this hour, airlines will soon be joining the companies which are forced to pay for the damage that they're causing the environment. The European Commission has decided airlines are now to be included in the EU's carbon emissions trading scheme. That means from 2011 they'll be given carbon permits. If their CO2 emissions exceed the limits, they'll have to buy more. The aviation industry accounts for 1.6% of global greenhouse gas emissions, but the impact's higher because gases are released at high altitude. By 2050, emissions will rise to 2.5%. One single 2-hour flight produces around 0.2 tonnes of carbon dioxide, roughly the same amount as driving a car for 3 months. A return flight from London to Sydney generates about 3.7 tonnes. Well, joining me to talk about this is Leo Murray, a spokesman for the environmental campaign group Plain Stupid. I suppose it's a silly question, but are you happy with how far the European Commission has gone?
It's a pathetically inadequate measure. The main problem with it is that it's going to have almost no impact on aviation growth itself. The EC admits that it's going to reduce growth by 3% at most.
So what should they have done?
Basically, this is an excuse to not take any meaningful measures. Ultimately, the only real way to reduce the CO2 emissions from aviation is to reduce the number of flights, and what that means is demand restraint. So a much more sensible thing to do would be to start arranging an EU-wide moratorium on airport expansion.
The end of the free market?
If you like.
And what will happen if they don't do something? If you say this doesn't go far enough, what are the climatic implications?
The climatic implications are absolutely catastrophic. I mean, it's ironic that we've had Tony Blair only a few weeks ago saying we have 10 years at most to address the problem of climate change, and the EU emissions trading scheme isn't even going to come into effect for another 5 years, and when it does, it's going to have no impact on aviation emissions, almost no impact on aviation emissions.
In the end, though, aviation emissions will account by 2050 to what, 2.5% of the problem? That's what the figures seem to show. Globally,
perhaps, I think that's a very conservative estimate, but certainly in the UK and across the EU, that proportion will be much, much larger than that. And those figures don't take into account the non-CO2 emissions impacts of nitrous oxide, contrails, as you just said, which are actually about 2 to 4 times as much.
You can't see the European Commission ideas in isolation, though. Obviously, national governments are also putting taxes on air travel. Is that going to help if you see everything together?
Taxes will help, and taxes are a very important part of the whole fiscal package which needs to be applied to aviation. But as I say, ultimately, demand for flying is going to increase, and the only way to prevent that growth is to not provide the airport capacity to accommodate it. So we need to have an EU-wide moratorium on airport expansion.
Be a very unpopular
It's the only solution.
Leo Murray, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem.